Have you ever found yourself sitting across from your grown child, wanting so badly for them to see the effort you're making, not just for them, but for yourself too? Maybe you've been trying to stay active, take care of your health, be more positive, or learn something new. And a part of you wants to say, "Look at what I did today," hoping they'll smile, approve, or at the very least notice. But then, the reaction isn't quite what you hoped for. Maybe it's a nod. A distracted, "That's great." Or worse, a quiet judgment that makes you second-guess whether you should have said anything at all. If you've ever felt that way, you're not alone. Many people, especially after 60, feel this growing urge to prove they're still capable, still growing, still contributing. And often, the first people we try to prove that to are our children. But here's something that may surprise you. Sometimes, the best thing you can do is not tell them what you're doing. Not because you're hiding anything, but because your growth doesn't need to be explained, justified, or even acknowledged to be real. You see, there's a quiet power in doing things for yourself, in learning, healing, and growing, not for praise or permission, but simply because you want to. When you stop explaining every move, something shifts inside you. You begin to reclaim your time, your energy, and your independence in ways you might not expect. That's what we're going to talk about today. Why keeping certain things to yourself, especially when it comes to your self-care, your goals, or your personal changes, can actually bring more peace, strength, and confidence into your life. And why sometimes silence is more empowering than any conversation. Let's start with this simple truth. When you tell your child everything you're doing, whether it's about your daily habits, your medical decisions, your routines, or your finances, you might think you're just sharing. But often what you're really doing is inviting judgment. Not because your child is a bad person, not at all, but because the moment you speak your choices aloud, those choices stop being just yours. They become something to be evaluated, questioned, approved or disapproved. Imagine telling your child, "I've decided to start walking a mile each morning." You're proud. It's a big step. But their reaction might be, "Are you sure that's safe? What if you fall? Shouldn't you be doing something gentler?" And just like that, your joy turns into doubt. The decision that felt right becomes something you second-guess. And maybe, just maybe, you stop walking altogether. It's not that you shouldn't listen to advice, but advice is only helpful when it comes at the right time, from the right place, not when it chips away at your motivation. When we constantly explain ourselves, we leave the door open for that kind of subtle discouragement. And over time, that discouragement adds up. You begin to hesitate, to wait for approval, to lose the beautiful freedom that comes with doing something simply because your heart told you to. Here's the thing. Your child may still see you as someone who needs help, someone who needs to be told what to do, how to live, how to stay safe. They're not trying to control you. But the roles have changed. Somewhere along the way, they became the responsible one, and you became someone they worry about. That shift can be frustrating, especially when you know deep down that you're perfectly capable of making your own decisions. By keeping your personal choices to yourself, you gently reclaim some of that balance. You're not pushing anyone away. You're simply saying, "I trust myself. I'm doing what feels right, and I don't need to explain it to anyone, not even the people I love most." And there's something else that's just as important. When you speak about what you're doing, especially early on, you risk draining the energy that could have gone into the action itself. Think about it. How many times have you shared your plans with someone, only to feel less motivated afterward? There's science behind that. Talking about your goals can trick the brain into feeling like you've already accomplished something. It gives a short-term high, a sense of progress, but then the drive to actually follow through starts to fade. That's why some of the most successful people, at any age, are the ones who keep their actions private, at least in the beginning. They let the results speak for themselves. No announcements? No explanations, just steady, quiet progress. They don't feel the need to justify or prove. They just do. And in that doing, they build something far more powerful than attention. They build self-trust. It's the same for you. Maybe you're starting a new health routine. Or maybe you've decided to downsize your home. Maybe you're learning how to use a smartphone or taking up watercolor painting. Whatever it is, ask yourself, who am I doing this for? If the answer is, for me, then maybe it doesn't need to be broadcast. Maybe the victory is sweeter when it's just yours. You're not here to impress anyone. You've already spent a lifetime taking care of others, raising children, working hard, showing up when it counted. Now is the time to show up for yourself. To live in a way that honors who you are today, not who you used to be or who others expect you to be. And maybe that means allowing some space between your actions and your words. Trust that your children will see your strength, not because you explain it, but because it radiates from you. They'll notice that you're calmer, more grounded, more joyful, even if they don't know exactly why. And that's okay. You don't need to share the whole story for them to feel its impact. This isn't about secrecy. It's about sovereignty. It's about giving yourself permission to live your life on your terms, quietly and fully. To do what matters to you without waiting for someone else's nod of approval. Now let's take a moment to breathe that in. Think of something you've done recently, something small but meaningful. Did you tell anyone about it? And if you did, how did that feel? Did it uplift you, or did it make you feel smaller, like your effort needed to be defended? If the answer is the latter, maybe that's a sign. A sign that it's time to hold your progress a little closer. Not out of fear, but out of love. Love for yourself, your path, and your right to walk it in peace. You don't owe the world an explanation for every decision. You don't owe your children a report card on how you spend your days. You are still the author of your life. You always have been. And sometimes the best way to write the next chapter is in silence, one sentence at a time, just for you. Let that be your strength. Let it be your quiet rebellion. Let it be the way you protect the most important relationship you have right now, the one with yourself. And once you start embracing that quiet strength, something beautiful happens. You begin to notice that you don't need anyone's applause to feel proud. You don't need their reassurance to know you're doing the right thing. The act of doing becomes its own reward. Whether it's taking a walk in the morning, cooking something healthy just for yourself, or sitting down with a new book that challenges your mind, it all becomes a quiet celebration of your life as it is right now. Of course, there's still that old habit, that tug to explain yourself. To say, I went to the doctor today, or I've started eating less sugar, or I've been practicing yoga in the mornings. And sometimes you will share, because connection is important. We're not meant to be islands. But when you do choose to share, let it come from a place of joy, not from a need to be validated. Let it be something you offer, not something you feel obligated to prove. It's also worth remembering that your child, no matter how grown they are, still sees you through a lens shaped by years of being cared for, supported, and guided. And while they may now worry about you, they also carry their own unspoken fears. Fear of losing you. Fear of watching you change. And sometimes when you tell them too much, those fears get triggered. Not because of anything you did wrong, but because they don't always know how to process your independence, especially if it challenges the story they've written in their head about you needing them. That's why, sometimes silence is the kindest gift you can give to both of you. It allows them the space to grow into this new version of you, not the parent who needs to be managed or fixed, but the individual who is still learning, still living, still capable of transformation. And it gives you the freedom to make choices without the emotional entanglement of their reactions. Think of it like tending a garden. Some seeds need darkness to take root. If you dig them up too soon, just to show someone the progress, you might damage the very thing you were trying to grow. Your personal growth, physical, emotional, or spiritual, is the same way. It needs time, privacy, and care. There's nothing selfish about that. In fact, it's one of the most loving things you can do for yourself. And while we're on the subject of growth, let's talk about something that often gets overlooked: the freedom to try and to fail without having to explain yourself. When you keep your efforts private, you give yourself permission to experiment, to mess up, to learn. If you try something new and it doesn't work out, you don't have to explain to anyone why you stopped. You don't have to feel like you let someone down. You simply take the lesson, adjust, and keep going. So many people give up not because they lost motivation, but because they felt embarrassed. Because they told someone they were starting something, and when it didn't stick, they felt judged. But when your journey belongs only to you, there is no performance. There is no need to justify or defend. There is only movement. Forward, backward, sideways, all of it is still progress. This is your time to live boldly and freely, even if that means doing it quietly. You've earned that right. Now, some of you may be thinking, but isn't it important to be open with family? Doesn't honesty build trust? And yes, that's true. But openness doesn't mean giving away every detail. It means being authentic. And authenticity doesn't require a running commentary on your daily choices. It means being true to yourself, and sometimes that means keeping some parts of your journey sacred, just for you. The real question isn't whether you should tell your child what you're doing. The real question is, why are you telling them? If it's to connect, to share joy, or to offer inspiration, beautiful. But if it's to prove, to explain, or to get permission, pause. Ask yourself if that conversation is really serving you. Ask yourself if you're giving away your power in exchange for comfort. One of the hardest but most liberating lessons we can learn is that not everyone needs to understand our choices for them to be valid. Not even our children. And that brings us to another truth. When you stop trying to be understood by everyone, you start to understand yourself so much more clearly. You stop diluting your energy by over-explaining. You stop holding back just to fit someone else's idea of what's age-appropriate or realistic. You begin to listen more deeply to your own inner wisdom, the part of you that has always known what you need, what makes you come alive, and what path you're meant to walk. It's that inner wisdom, not the voices around you, that will carry you forward now. When you act from that place of quiet knowing, your presence changes. You walk with more peace. You move with more confidence. People may not even be able to put their finger on it, but they'll sense something different about you. Not because you told them, but because you lived it. And what's more inspiring than that? And when people begin to sense that change in you, something interesting starts to happen. You may notice that your child treats you a little differently, maybe with a bit more respect, a bit more curiosity. Not because you demanded it, not because you explained anything, but because your quiet confidence speaks volumes. You didn't ask for validation. You simply lived in a way that showed them who you are now. And that's something words could never fully capture. Sometimes what your child needs most is not an explanation, but an example. They may not say it aloud, but watching you live with intention, watching you make healthy choices, take on new challenges, or set quiet boundaries, that teaches them something. It shows them that growth doesn't stop at 60, 70, or even 80. It shows them that their own future can be vibrant and full of possibility too. And that's the kind of message that lasts. But it only works if it's real, not performed, not narrated, not polished for public consumption, just lived. That's the kind of presence you're cultivating when you choose to do things without needing to tell your child what you're doing. And you might be surprised how deeply freeing that can feel. When you no longer have to brace yourself for their opinions or their concerns. When you stop putting your life up for discussion. That's when you finally step into a space that belongs fully to you. Of course, This doesn't mean shutting your children out. It doesn't mean withholding love or building walls where there used to be warmth. It simply means you're shifting the balance. You're no longer seeking validation. You're no longer asking for permission. You're living from a place of self-trust, and that actually deepens your relationships rather than weakens them. When you don't feel the need to explain, your conversations with your child can become lighter, more joyful. You're not always delivering updates or bracing for critiques. You're connecting heart to heart, not role to role. That opens space for laughter, for storytelling, for simply enjoying each other's company without the weight of how you're doing or what you've been working on. You're not managing their perception anymore. You're just being. And that shift ripples into every part of your life. You begin to listen more closely to what you want, rather than what you think will impress others. You make choices based on your values, your energy, your joy, not on whether someone will approve or understand. Think of how many moments in your life were spent asking for someone's blessing, whether to take a trip, spend your money a certain way, change a routine, or even just rest. How many times have you second-guessed something that felt right to you because someone else, even your own child, questioned it? What would it feel like to never have to do that again? To move through your day guided by your own rhythm, to wake up and ask yourself, what would make me feel good today? And then do that, without reporting it to anyone, without rehearsing how you'll explain it, without wondering how it'll be received. That's real freedom, and it's available to you right now. This phase of life, it's not a shrinking, it's not a winding down, it's a return. A return to the part of you that was always there, quietly waiting. The part that remembers what it means to live for your own joy. To create without apology. To rest without guilt. To grow without audience. And in this return, there's no need to prove yourself to your children or to anyone else. Your value is not tied to how productive you are, how busy you stay, or how many good habits you report. You are worthy just as you are. Resting, walking, reading, praying, laughing, being. You don't have to turn your life into a performance. You only have to live it. And sometimes the deepest form of love, for yourself and for others, is silence. That kind of silence isn't empty. It's full of intention. It's where your energy gathers, where your clarity sharpens, where your spirit breathes freely. And from that quiet place, you'll find yourself moving differently. Slower perhaps, but with more peace, more steadiness, more grace. You'll no longer feel the pull to update everyone. You'll stop keeping score of your progress. You'll start measuring your days by how they feel, not by what you can point to or defend. And in that shift, you'll find more than just ease. You'll find strength. The kind that doesn't need to be announced or explained. The kind that simply is, visible in the calmness of your presence, the steadiness of your choices, the quiet joy that lives in your smile. You've lived long enough to know this. People don't remember what you said nearly as much as how you made them feel. So make your days feel good, for you. Let your child see that you're doing well, not because you told them, but because they can sense it in you. There is nothing wrong with keeping some things to yourself. In fact, it might just be one of the most powerful things you can do. There's a special kind of wisdom that comes with age, the kind that no book can teach, no expert can define. It's the wisdom of knowing when to speak and when to hold your peace, when to explain and when to simply nod, smile, and keep moving forward. And as you grow into this season of life, that wisdom becomes your quiet strength. Maybe you've already felt it. Maybe you've already sensed that the most powerful moments in your day are not the ones filled with noise, activity, or long conversations, but the ones where you feel deeply connected to yourself. That early morning stillness when the sun just begins to rise. That quiet satisfaction after doing something just for you. That sense of pride in a small act no one else will ever know about. That's the kind of life that doesn't need applause to be meaningful. It doesn't need to be explained to be valuable. It just is. Full of worth, full of dignity, full of truth. And the truth is, your child doesn't need to know everything you do. What they need to know, what they feel, is that you're okay, that you're at peace, that you're living a life that brings you comfort, growth, maybe even excitement. And that truth doesn't need to be spoken out loud every day. It shines through your voice, your presence, your steadiness. When you stop trying to prove, explain, or report, you reclaim something sacred, your autonomy. And that's not something age should take away from you. It's something age should deepen. You have earned the right to live quietly, powerfully, and in full alignment with what matters most to you. There will always be people who think they know what's best for you. Some of them might even be your children. And yes, it comes from love, from fear, from care, but it's still their story, not yours. You don't have to carry their worries. You don't have to shrink your joy or second-guess your instincts. You've made it this far not by chance, but by strength. And that strength, the one that's carried you through heartache, hard work, loss, change, it's still with you now, stronger than ever, even if no one sees it but you. So live in that strength. Let it guide you as you walk forward. Do the things that matter to you, not because someone else told you to, but because your spirit said yes. And if no one else ever knows, if you never utter a word of what you've done, let that be okay. Let that be enough. Because here's the truth. The most powerful version of you may not be the one who shares the most, talks the loudest, or explains everything. The most powerful version of you may be the one who lives with quiet courage, who wakes up each day and chooses to keep going, keep growing, keep showing up for yourself, not for show, not for praise, but because it's what your soul needs. And when you live that way, your child will notice, maybe not in every detail, but in the way your eyes shine brighter, your voice sounds calmer, your energy feels lighter. They'll sense the shift. And even if they never say a word, even if they don't understand the full story, they'll know something good is happening. They'll know you're living well, that you're living free. That's the gift you give them. Not by telling them what you do, but by becoming someone they quietly admire. Not for what you say, but for how you carry yourself. For how you live, how you love, how you keep discovering what life still has to offer. So as this video draws to a close, I hope you'll take this message to heart. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to prove yourself. You don't have to announce every step. You are already enough, exactly as you are, exactly where you are. The small, steady actions you take each day, they matter. Even if no one else knows about them, especially when no one else knows about them. Because those are the actions that come from deep within, from intention, not performance. Keep walking, keep growing, keep doing what's right for you, and let your life speak for itself. If this message resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. What are you doing these days just for yourself? And if you've ever felt that tug to explain or prove something to your children, know that you're not alone. We're all learning, even now, how to stand in our quiet power. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more content that supports you in living fully, freely, and fearlessly at every age. And remember, you are not defined by what you tell others. You are defined by how you live and how you love, and the quiet courage that carries you through each day. Here's to living your truth, beautifully, unapologetically, and with all the grace this life has to offer. No explanations needed. You've earned this. You're living it, and you're doing it wonderfully. Thank you for spending this time with me. Until next time, take care, and take pride in every silent step you take forward.